In the blame game, that's the subject of tonight's Waters Words. Hardcore Democrat and Bernie Sanders volunteer James Hodgkinson opened fire at a House Republican baseball practice on Wednesday, injuring 5, including House Majority Whip Scalise, who remains in critical condition. The shooter targeted Republicans because they were Republicans. His social media profile sadly reads like most Trump-hating Democrats. He was a part of the resistance, an Occupy Wall Streeter, and was consumed with fake news and the Russia hoax. He called Donald Trump an a-hole, a traitor, and belonged to a group called Terminate the Republican Party. Let's be clear. Hodgkinson is fully responsible for his wicked actions, but he traffics in a hateful left-wing media world that dehumanizes Republicans and blurs the lines of acceptable behavior and acceptable rhetoric. In this toxic atmosphere, the President of the United States is slandered as greedy, racist, traitor, whose policies will kill Americans. Hodgkinson consumed this propaganda for years and then perpetrated a political assassination attempt. Is there any connection there? We'll never truly know because Capitol Hill police shot heroically this evil man dead. But remember when Sarah Palin innocently released a map with targets indicating House seats she wanted to flip in the midterm elections? When a deranged psychopath shot Congresswoman Gabby Giffords in Arizona, the left-wing media actually linked Ms. Palin to the shooting.
Giffords was one of 20 Democrats whose districts were lit up in crosshairs on a Sarah Palin campaign website.
This shooting came with the state of our politics seemingly nastier than ever. And rightly or wrongly, fingers are being pointed today, and one of those coming under criticism is Sarah Palin.
If Sarah Palin, whose website put and today scrubbed bullseye targets on 20 representatives, including Gabby Giffords, does not repudiate her own part.
Bernie Sanders was so eager to cash in on the Giffords tragedy that he sent out a fundraising letter that blamed right-wing reactionaries for the attack. How do you think Sanders would feel if Republicans blamed him for his own volunteer worker shooting a congressman? The connection between Palin and the shooting didn't even exist. It was manufactured to score political points. But Hodgkinson's clear connection to the inflammatory Democratic propaganda was ignored by Speaker Nancy Pelosi, who actually had the nerve to blame Republican rhetoric for Republicans taking a bullet.
Coarsen political behavior. Do you see this as equally afflicting the left and the right? And
no, I do not. Somewhere in the 90s, Republicans decided on a politics of personal destruction.
Pelosi's politicizing an assassination attempt on her own colleague while the man is still in the hospital. She couldn't wait one day before pointing fingers. And when Pelosi refuses to take ownership of her side's rhetoric and behavior, it sends a signal to Democrats that this isn't our problem or our responsibility. So she's actually giving license to it. Political violence exists primarily on the left these days. You don't believe me? Just last year, left-wing protesters fought and threw eggs at Trump supporters in San Jose. A Trump supporter in New Jersey was attacked with a crowbar on the street. A Republican office in North Carolina was firebombed. Berkeley protesters rioted over conservative speakers. A woman ran her Republican congresswoman off the road for his Obamacare repeal vote. And this week, shots were fired at a truck flying a Make America Great Again flag. This is just a fraction of left-wing violence. I could do a whole show on it. Perhaps there's a connection between left-wing celebrities pushing violence and violence on the streets.
You talk like a sign language gorilla who got hit in the head. In fact, the only thing your mouth is good for is being Vladimir Putin's holster.
I'll meet him in a hotel room any mother day of the week and give him a Louisville Slugger. Kiss my mother, you punk sucker.
That last clip courtesy of TMZ Sports. So beheadings, assassination plays, and violent threats all taking place on the left with little condemnation. Democrats like to say, oh, well, Ted Nugent threatened Barack Obama. Yeah, that was one celebrity. And you know what? He actually apologized for it, unlike the other Democratic celebrities.
But at the tender age of 69, my wife has convinced me that I just can't use those harsh terms. I cannot, and I will not, and I encourage even my friends.
So until Democratic leadership takes ownership of their side's out-of-control rhetoric and behavior, this behavior will unfortunately continue. In fact, the more Trump is successful, the more hysterical and dangerous the left's going to become. We cannot ignore the warning signs any longer. Joining me now with his reaction, former Republican presidential candidate Pat Buchanan and author of the new book, Nixon's White House Wars. So, Pat, I'd like to just first get your reaction to my Waters' words. What did you think?
I think you're right. I've never seen such vilification and hatred and bile directed at a president of the United States. It really almost exceeds what happened to Richard Nixon in his final days. And secondly, Jesse, look, we have real violence going on in many of these demonstrations against Trumpites who are out demonstrating on the weekend. You have battles, you have brawls, you have fist fights. Cops are having trouble breaking them up. We really are on the verge, I think, of an uncivil conflict in this country. And here in Washington, D.C., there is a clear objective of the elites, the corporate elites, or rather the political elites, and the media, basically to bring down the President of the United States and to reverse the election of 2016.
Yeah, you actually wrote your latest op-ed. It was titled, "Are We Nearing Civil War?" And just to be clear, we're not talking about, bayonets on the street here. You're saying there's a civil war within the federal government?
First off, there is something of a civil war going on in society, these weekend demonstrations. Every weekend you see violence, people are fighting with each other, cursing each other, the cops are keeping them apart. That's the national politics. But here in the city itself, we have a civil war, I would say, inside the government of the United States, where the deep state, the permanent regime, is leaking criminally to the media to bring down the President of the United States who was elected by the American people. Mm-hmm. There's a real contest on now whether Donald Trump will survive his first term. People are talking about impeachment 4 months in.
I know, I've never seen it like this before, and Trump tweeted about this. "I am being investigated for firing the FBI director by the man who told me to fire the FBI director. Witch hunt." Also another tweet, he says, "After 7 months of investigations and committee hearings about my collusion with the Russians, nobody has been able to show any proof. Sad." Is there any way besides Twitter the president can fight off this regime change attempt, in your opinion?
Well, listen, the collusion that is going on is between leakers who are breaking the law, leaking state secrets to the press that go on the front page and damaging the President of the United States. I think the President and his staff, or the Attorney General and Department of Justice, should run down these leakers and prosecute these individuals and expose these individuals. But the truth is that this is going to go on. There's a real battle. I mean, Donald Trump won the election, and there's a real battle ongoing, Jesse, for him to retain the presidency of the United States. Now, take a look at when you talk about, interfering with FBI investigation. That's been going on a year. Mm-hmm. No collusion has been exposed. But Trump has certain powers here that are legitimate. And when you talk about Comey, I mean, if the President of the United States, Mr. Trump, had come in and said, in the national interest, I want to shut down the investigation of Hillary Clinton and of the Clinton Foundation to bring us together, people would have applauded. He has not exceeded, in my judgment, his authority at all, and they're talking impeachment. I know, and you know what? If they want to play hardball like that, the president could, reopen up an investigation into Hillary's email, or open up an investigation into the Clinton Foundation. Take a look about what happened with the IRS situation. Fast and the Furious, we reported last week, could be re-examined. And you brought up the leaks. Major Washington Post leaking going on daily. You had, one about Jared Kushner, potentially, and, this other obstruction of justice situation that Mueller is now looking into. These are serious leaks that are coming out, designed, in my opinion, to undermine the President of the United States from within. Oh, I'm sure they are. Now, look at the leak. Now, I don't agree with what General Flynn did, but it was a leak of his conversation with the Russian ambassador in the Washington Post, which is a de facto crime that brought down the National Security Advisor to the President of the United States. I mean, and then excuse me, what Bob Dole used to say, where is the outrage here? And the reason this thing is tolerated is because the media are benefiting from it, and together the media and the deep state are determined to bring this president down in disgrace, to break his mandate, and to remove him from office.
Well, he's got to do a lot better job fighting back and, you know, make some examples out of some people. And, you know, I can't believe this is already happening. It's not even summer yet. Pat, thank you very much for joining me. I really appreciate it. It's the other scandal rocking America. What we know about The Bachelor in Paradise, alleged hot tub assault that could kill the show forever. And Shakespeare in the Park still assassinating President Trump even after this week's political shooting. Waters World gets the reviews. Shooting at a House Republican baseball practice. But it didn't stop the New York Times from keeping up the fake news. The Times editorial board hashed up an old lie from a 2011 shooting of Democratic Congresswoman Gabby Gifford and linked Governor Palin to the shooting, in essence claiming she was to blame. The paper was forced to issue a correction, saying they incorrectly stated that a link existed between political rhetoric and the 2011 shooting of Representative Gabby Giffords. Governor Palin responded, tweeting out a suggestion that she sue. Common sense suggestion by a journalist. I'm talking to attorneys this morning and exploring options. By the way, I wonder, why would someone would no longer be in public eye think constant libel and slander have anything to do with it? So can she sue for libel? Here to walk us through it, attorney Emily Compagno. So it would really be sweet justice, Emily, if Sarah Palin sued the New York Times and won. Do you think she has a case?
She does, and actually, it doesn't matter if she's kind of faded from the limelight for a while. For her to rise to that public figure status, it just matters that she originally had it, and that the source of it, i.e. her political jobs, that is the same reason why it's of interest now. And the reason she has a case here is because what she has to prove is that the reporter knew at the time that it was false or acted with reckless disregard for its falsity. And it's difficult to prove. She needs clear and convincing evidence. But they look into what was his fact-checking like, what was his research like, who did he talk to? So it's not enough that he didn't like her, but I'd like to point out that regardless of the difficulty, people like Roman Polanski have even been successful with these defamation suits.
How do you show malice in a case like this?
The definition of malice for a public figure is showing a reckless disregard for the falsity, or that you knew at the time that it was false. And remember, it's not a reasonable person standard.
Now to the other scandal rocking America. Roll the tape.
Oh my God. Sorry, guys. I napped. I definitely know how to turn on the sex charm.
That was Corinne Olympios during happier days on the most recent season of The Bachelor. Fans know her as the girl with the nanny. She was set to star in the series' summer spinoff Bachelor in Paradise, but the show was shut down this week over claims she was boozed up and sexually assaulted in a hot tub while the cameras were rolling. Now, I'm a self-admitted fan of The Bachelor and The Bachelorette and Bachelor in Paradise. I like the whole franchise. I'm not ashamed of it. But if she's intoxicated and she's in a hot tub and there's, you know, some sexual activity going on and, you know, the cameras are still rolling, you know, why didn't anybody come forward immediately and shut this down? Why did it take some whistleblower producer to bring this to light?
Right, and that's part of what makes this so fascinating. So first of all, that producer did, however, speak up on set. And that's a positive for the Warner Brothers, I have to say, because they have fostered a culture where if you see something, say something. So that works in their favor. So the producers did speak up right then, and then that's why they did shut it down that night. The other interesting thing about this, other than the fact that the entire thing was recorded, is that issue of the third party coming in. So it's not that she voiced the lack of consent the next day, which she did. It's that the trigger was actually the producer at the time. Now, their contracts that they have, Warner Brothers, with these contestants, they're pretty ironclad, but that's an issue here.
You sign your life away, I think, when you go on these shows, and anything that happens on the set usually winds up on the air. Now, Corinne released a statement, and we have it here. She says, partial statement, as a woman, this is my worst nightmare, and it has now become my reality. I have retained a group of professionals to ensure that what happened on June 4th comes to light and I can continue my life. So, you know, everybody feels terrible for what happened, and it looks like they could have a potential serious lawsuit on their hands. I want to get to another story, though, about crazy. It's this guilty verdict for this woman who texted her boyfriend to kill himself.
Now finds you guilty on the indictment charging you with the involuntary manslaughter of the person Conrad Roy III.
All right, so take us through what happened here. She was dating this guy or something like that, and he was suicidal, and she's texting him, to do it, and I guess he was, running the car in the exhaust, and she said, get back in the car. And I think she was charged with, was it involuntary manslaughter or something like this? How does that stick when you're just texting someone to commit suicide?
Right. And that was part of the defense's argument. They said, look, there's not really a law against this, and so clearly, prosecution, you're trying to make this fit into something. Just what you said. How does this fit? And the story is that these were two youth. She was 17, he was 18, and they each had history of mental issues, treatment, and she was on Celexa, which is an antidepressant. And so another argument her defense had was, well, she was basically intoxicated from Celexa. She didn't know what she was doing. She didn't have the ability to have that specific mindset of
didn't work very well. I don't think there's ever been a case like this before. Emily, thank you very much.
No. Thank you.
Still ahead, this tweet from CNN, fake news. And we're going to tell you why up next. And the generation that needs safe spaces wants a safe space for radical Islam too.
Domestic terrorism with Christian groups, for example, and you don't really call them, you don't go around saying radical Christianism or radical Catholic, things like that, right?
Which attacks would those be? This program is...
Time now for some real news you probably didn't hear this week. Rolling Stone magazine has settled a lawsuit with the University of Virginia fraternity for $1.65 million after falsely accusing them of raping a woman in November 2014 article. You probably remember the accusations, but you didn't hear as much about the corrections. The article was retracted in April 2015 after police could not find evidence to back up the woman's claims. Fake news. Mark Ruffalo, otherwise known as the Hulk in the Avengers movies, pushing a petition pressuring NBC executives to stop hiring white conservatives. Ruffalo said NBC execs need to know there will be a sharp backlash if they add more hosts like Nicole Wallace, Megyn Kelly, and George Will, who create right-wing hate. Mark, if MSNBC is too right-wing for you, try Al Jazeera. The Capitol was buzzing this week after reports that Senate Republicans were banning reporters from doing TV interviews with senators and congressmen in the halls of the Capitol building. Why would they do that? Roll the tape.
Do you have anything you'd like to say about that pretty girl situation?
No, I had managed to have forgotten that incident.
Just a quick question for you. Why don't you support Kate's Law?
Tell me what that's all about.
You forgot already? It was the hearing last week.
No, I was at the hearing, but tell me what aspects of it you're
protecting Americans from criminal illegal alien killers.
I think we should work to make sure that Americans are protected.
Now, you said that Fox News chokes us and lies to us. Who's us, and what are the lies?
Are you afraid of Hillary Clinton? Maybe we could do this another time. Feeling the burn. I think he needs a safe space. Republican Senator Richard Shelby, chairman of the Rules Committee, did clarify that no changes to the existing rules have been made, but they are working to enforce existing rules for safety. New Orleans has canceled its 4th of July waterborne celebration because the founder, Katrina Breeze, is upset by President Trump and does say she just does not feel as patriotic. She added that even the costumes mocking our president upset her during this year's Mardi Gras. And now your fake news of the week. CNN putting out this tweet about a pregame prayer at the bipartisan baseball game. Members of the Democratic team gather on the field for a prayer before the congressional baseball game. The problem? It's both the Republicans and Democrats. More fake news. Coming up, teddy bears, balls, and coloring books are staples of nursery schools, but now college students are using them to cope Comedian Adam Carolla takes us inside safe spaces and his plans to destroy them. And no safe space is safe in Waters World. I head to Central Park to see the play that murders President Trump.
They martyred Trump. They make him into more of a saint.
They did.
Live from America's News headquarters, good evening, everyone. I'm Julie Banderas. At least 7 U.S. service members are injured after an insider attack in northern Afghanistan. They were wounded when an Afghan army soldier opened fire inside a military compound. U.S. military officials say the attacker was shot and died on his way to the hospital. A Taliban spokesman praised the attack but did not claim responsibility. It comes exactly 1 week after 3 U.S. soldiers were killed and 1 injured in another insider attack in Afghanistan. After more than 52 hours of deliberations, jurors in the Bill Cosby sexual assault case were unable to reach a verdict. This was the only criminal case against the 79-year-old entertainer. Dozens of women have accused him of sexual misconduct. The jury failed to reach a unanimous decision on any of the 3 counts against Cosby. Prosecutors say they will try again. I'm Julie Banderas. Now back to Waters World. You're watching Fox.
The push for political correctness on college campuses is leaving students brainwashed and out of touch. But it could also be creating an entire generation that will be unable to even defeat terrorism because it hurts their feelings to label it. I wanted to see just how clueless they've gotten, so we sent Campus Reform's Cabot Phillips to find out.
Do you think we should be using the word radical Islam in talking about ISIS, or do you think that term may be too offensive to use and could offend people too much?
No, that's definitely wrong.
It might be on the more offensive side.
There's been domestic terrorism with like Christian groups, for example, and you don't really call them. You don't go around saying like radical Christianism or radical Catholic, things like that, right?
Which attacks would those be?
I can't name them from the top of my head, but I know that. I'm trying to think. There's certain churches. I can't name any of them, but from the top of my head.
Really, most of the people who are saying we can't say radical Islamic terrorism also don't want to acknowledge that there's a radical wing of the Islam religion.
I just don't really like grouping people into that and kind of singling out Islam as a violent religion.
You think of the KKK and they're a Christian organization. Would you call them radical Christians?
It's not people killing others in the name of Christianity or killing people in the name of atheism. It is a seemingly unique problem to Islam. By not addressing the threat as radical Islam, which it is, you're not actually going to get anywhere in defeating it. Well, what's your response to that?
Focusing more on acceptance and rehabilitation of extremist groups, kind of figuring out why they're extremists.
There's very strong, deep-seated fear in the United States that's often, in my opinion, irrational.
Phillips joins me now, along with comedian Adam Carolla, who's part of the new film No Safe Spaces, an effort to end the left's brainwashing on college campuses. So, Cabot, I'll start with you. I couldn't see your collar on that video. That was very confusing. Also, my favorite part of the video is when the person says they want to have acceptance and rehabilitation for terrorists.
Love leads the way. If we just love these terrorists into not wanting to kill us, then they'll stop, clearly. But what we're seeing here are the real-world impacts of this PC culture, for anyone wondering what are the long-term impacts. And I don't think it just stems from nowhere. The left has been pushing this. We know this. And for the last 8 years, President Obama in the White House refused to say it. And so when we saw President Trump catching all of this heat for using this term radical Islam, following the London attacks, we thought, how does this translate on college campuses? And I think most students, they just are giving these prepared answers that they know they're expected to give, which is the sad part.
Yeah, they're not being independent thinkers. So, Adam, we had your producer friend on here last week, and I couldn't believe what he said about these safe spaces. You go into a safe space because you are unable to deal with the harsh realities of the real world, and they give you hot chocolate and blankets. Is that really true?
I don't know. I've never been to one. I only go to construction sites and the occasional strip club. But that's what I hear.
You're a man's man, Adam. I'm a real man's man.
You know what I hear in that video And this is where the danger is we are grafting our own feelings onto ISIS. So we're saying, hey, if you just treat them with respect and just get along and show some love and maybe give them a hug, they'll drop their swords and stop burning pilots. This is what caused 9/11. Think about 9/11. 9/11 was who would fly an airplane into a building, because if you fly an airplane into the building, how are you going to parachute out of the airplane? And someone would go, no, you're just going to fly it into the building. And you'd go, well, who's going to do that? You'd be the first person to hit the building if you're flying the plane. We can't think like them. Thus, it's going to leave us vulnerable.
So if someone ever would attempt to hug a terrorist, I think they'd get their throats slit pretty quickly. When you're out on these college campuses, and I've done this too, there's not an acknowledgement of the harsh and dangerous realities of radical Islam. Is there?
There's not at all, and I really want to go to some of these safe spaces, just show up, kind of rattle them around, maybe bring some gluten to scare all these people off the safe spaces. And what it is these students it's not that they don't fear anything, it's that they fear the wrong things.
So Adam, this movie that you're doing with Prager, No Safe Spaces, it's not getting Hollywood funding. Why do you think that is? And before you answer, I just want to play a little clip for the audience so they can see what it's all about.
Okay.
Helping them discover their true gender, sexuality, and racial identity.
We judge people based on racial origin and history of oppression.
We call it the progressive stack.
I'm Black.
I'm Hispanic. I'm Asian.
I'm a student at Utopia University.
Utopia University. So Hollywood doesn't want to fund this film, so you're trying to raise money in other ways. Is that right?
Well, to be fair to Hollywood, they probably have 150 anti-fracking movies in the pipeline. And I was thinking about this. I bet we won't be able to say "in the pipeline" anymore.
That's offensive. That's
oil-centric.
That's right. You mentioned something when you spoke to our producer, Adam, that I think it was Seinfeld and Chris Rock. They don't even tour on college campuses anymore because everybody's so sensitive, they can't even handle any of the cutting-edge humor.
Yeah, I mean, for those guys, they're millionaires 20 times over or 120 times over. And it's basically, why go down and try to feed the homeless community if somebody put a shank in you last time you went down there with your plate of lasagna? They're just going, screw it, I'll stay in the limousine and keep driving.
That's right. Don't bite the hand that feeds you. You know, these colleges, it's ridiculous. The greatest generation's probably laughing at these millennials. I even believe people even announce that they're millennials. I think that's kind of a shameful label. And I don't even know if you're allowed to label anything anymore. Are people allowed to label you?
I don't identify as a millennial anymore, even though I technically am. I'm choosing not to identify as such.
Okay.
Because apparently I can do that. But really,
you're a self-loathing millennial.
I'm a self-loathing millennial. But like you said, it's contradictory to the point of what college is about in the first place. You go to college to be offended. We see this nonstop at Campus Reform, how people don't actually care about having their opinions expanded. They just go to college to have them confirmed, and sadly, administrations are allowing that to happen.
Adam, I'll give you the 30 seconds to the last word here. Do you think this is going to make things any better, or do you think we're just headed over a cliff here with this new generation?
I think we'll head over a cliff. I think we'll burst into flames, and then we'll rebuild. The rise of the UFC is because of all this. Why is the UFC the fastest growing sport? Because
boxing was terrible.
Every 5 snowflakes, we want to see a guy in his underpants kick another guy in the head.
Right.
Because that's who we are.
All right, so you're predicting the next generation after millennials are going to be pretty hardcore, grungy Americans? Is that it?
I say flannel-wearing, cage-fighting, but undergoing a sexual transformation. That part won't leave. They'll be undergoing sexual reassignment surgery, but yes.
All right, well, hopefully I'll be dead by then. Guys, thank you very much. Despite this week's shooting, that play depicting President Trump being assassinated is still being performed. But should it? Water's World investigates. NBA champs Golden State Warriors might boycott a White House visit because of Donald Trump. And ESPN under fire for lack of patriotism. Does politics belong in sports? That debate up next. Almost as soon as the final buzzer sounded and Golden State became the 2017 NBA champs, the talk turned to politics. If asked, would the Warriors go to the White House for the traditional championship visit? MVP and star guard Steph Curry has said probably not. So is this disrespectful? Joining me now is NFL player and author of the new Dad's Playbook, Benjamin Watson. So Steph Curry says he doesn't really want to go to the White House, but he says it's a team decision. Don't you think the team should show up?
I think that's a great answer by him. I don't think it's disrespectful for him not to want to go to the White House. I think that's a personal decision. I do think, however, that he does show a certain amount of leadership by saying that it's going to be a team decision. I'd love to see the team there. When I was in New England, we won in 2004, and we all went to the White House, regardless if we were Republicans or Democrat, because we respect the office. So it's a great opportunity for a team, and it's kind of a tradition that teams go when they win. But we've seen other people pull out at different times.
Is Trump different than other presidents? I know George W. Bush was the president when you were there in 2004. Is he that much worse where people are saying, you know, I usually don't like Republicans, but it's Donald Trump, I'm definitely not going?
We're in a situation where there are a lot of very strong emotions regarding President Donald Trump. That being said,
what kind of precedent does this send, though, if a team, a whole team, not just one player, doesn't show up to the White House?
Well, I think this is something that we have to combat right now. This is something that's going to come up again. This is not going to be the first time. And we look
because the Warriors might win another championship.
Well, not even that, but when we looked at New England, they won, and a couple of guys didn't go.
Right.
So a lot of people showed up, some people didn't, and I just think
Who didn't go on your team when Bush
No, I'm talking about when they just won.
Oh, right.
I know they win all the time.
Right.
But when
it's hard to keep track.
Exactly. When they just won, a certain number of guys didn't show up, and you know, it was their right not to do so. They don't support the president. Look, there have been presidents that I've been in favor of, and those that I haven't. But regardless of that fact, going to the White House, I think, as an American, is something that I would do. People choose to protest in different ways, and I think the great thing about this country is that they have a right to protest in the way they deem necessary at that time.
Okay, well, I'd love to see the champs show up. Also this week, ESPN host Max Kellerman says the NFL has made sports political by playing the national anthem.
Colin Kaepernick also did not go looking for a protest. It came to him. He was asked to stand for the national anthem. You do not have to stand for the national anthem, and even if it was a rule that you did, is that Colin Kaepernick injecting politics into the NFL? No. That's the NFL injecting politics by playing the national anthem and putting pressure on you to stand for it in the first place.
So, Ben, I don't agree with that at all, and I like Max Kellerman. He's a fantastic boxing analyst and knows a lot about sports, but I don't believe playing the national anthem injects politics. It injects patriotism, and it doesn't force anybody to stand up, does it?
Well, the understanding is that we stand for our national anthem, and I've talked about this. I've written about this. The default mechanism for any American, any citizen of any country would be to think to